Hi all you lovely kings, queens, and in-betweens. My name is Elaine, and today I'm going to be talking about Glasslip. Glasslip tells the story of Toko and her friends whom often gather at Cafe Kazemichi to relax. During the summer of their final year, a new boy, Kakeru Okikura, joins their high school, throwing a wrench in their friend group and some supernatural insanity into their lives, since he claims to hear voices from the future and feels that Toko can see the future through glass. The main cast of characters is pretty small. There's Toko Fukami, the local glass workshop owner's eldest daughter, who can glimpse the future through glass. Yanagi, Toko's best friend and wannabe model, who has a crush on her stepbrother Yukinari. Yukinari has a crush on Toko. Sachi is the sickly, soft-spoken, glass-sporting girl of the group, who loves to read and is bisexual. And Hiro is the klutz who has a major crush on Sachi. Then there's Kakeru, who shows up in the sum of the group's final year. He claims to have been led to Toko's side by the voices he has heard from the future. And while Toko is drawn to him, everyone else in the friend group is put off by him and tries to keep him as far away from Toko as possible for various reasons. For example, Yukinari takes a jealous stance and tries to keep Kakeru away from Toko, since he views the other boy as a rival for his crush's affection. And we as viewers are seemingly urged to take the friend group's stance on Kakeru, urged to dislike him with each passing episode. Part of this stems from his unpleasant, know-it-all nature, some from his demanding nature, and some from his extremely controlling nature. A large portion of the anime's plot revolves around Kakeru's relationship with Toko, and their attempts at making sense of their supernatural powers. Unfortunately, these powers aren't explained very well. Neither is the reason or reasons behind why these two young people have these abilities. Although the characters and their backstories aren't particularly clear or well fleshed out, some of the introductions we get to these characters are extremely well done. Early on in the show, the gang is attending a festival, and we watch Toko admire the glass of her Ramune, or maybe the marble in the glass. From there, we see the visuals transition to Yukinari, who is admiring Toko as she admires her Ramune, before cutting to his stepsister, who is clearly watching Yukinari admire Toko. This is a wonderful way to introduce these characters and how they feel toward one another romantically. Clearly, Yukinari admires Toko and has feelings for her, and Yanagi is jealous of her best friend because she has feelings for Yukinari, and Toko herself is completely oblivious. This simple, wordless setup creates tension, speaks volumes without words, and promises viewers that the anime will explore the dynamic between the characters, especially when it comes to romance. Unfortunately, the anime doesn't know how to tell a proper love story, and we as viewers can see this with each passing episode, because this simple setup mirrors the progression of another romantic setup, which held so much potential. The potential romance between Sachi and Hiro. We see them in scene after scene just sitting together and reading books. They don't talk much, but they're spending time together, and Hiro is content because he really wants to spend as much time with Sachi as possible. And Sachi, presumably, expects Hiro to express his romantic feelings toward her, even going so far as to invite him to her room, alone, without adult supervision or any of their other friends around. But Hiro never says anything. Flash forward to Sachi in the hospital. Hiro is visiting because he wants to spend time with her. And Sachi's mother naturally asks who Hiro is and why he's visiting her daughter, prompting Sachi to blurt out that Hiro is her boyfriend, ruining the slow-building romantic story the anime had been telling over the past several episodes, and arguably forcing Sachi to act out of character. She's usually so soft-spoken, and suddenly she's blurting out a lie to her mother and ruining something that could have been a good thing. One could argue, and I would, that up until that point, the show had been doing a good job of speaking volumes with no words, or minimal words in certain instances. And it's strange to see a show with that sort of talent ruin it with a perfect example of the wrong way to use words. I believe it would have been far better to allow Hiro to gradually build up the strength to speak more openly with his crush, and have their romance blossom more openly from there. To have it build from sitting in a room and reading together, barely talking, to texting about books and other topics, to actually speaking in person about themselves, their feelings, and the things that make them happy. It's so sad because this could have been done so much better, but it simply wasn't. Kakeru and Toko are even worse, simply because they don't seem to have a real reason for being together or showing interest in one another outside of their powers. They don't act particularly romantic toward one another, have a real chemistry, don't agree on anything, and don't seem like a pair that would be inclined toward one another romantically. To transition to a slightly more positive note, the story falls into the Yashiki subgenre. It is a subgenre slice of life portraying characters living out peaceful lives in calming environments, and is intended to have a healing effect on the audience. The story's visuals, especially within the context of this subgenre, were executed extremely well. There were wonderful contrasts between gray, empty streets and the characters walking through lush green natural scenery. And as the characters moved through this animated world, we as viewers were given a tour of their town and its surrounding areas. We'd see things like the cafe the group liked to frequent, the beach, the streets that wove through their hometown. The developers really really captured a wonderful, tranquil, small-town atmosphere and the sounds that would envelop it. The anime included what I call the mandatory anime sounds, birds chirping, and that one track of cicadas making their cicada noises. These more natural notes are interwoven with orchestral songs performed on the piano, which are designed to lend the piece emotional strength, heighten what we as viewers are feeling. For example, if there is tension present in a scene, the music shifts, its tone becoming harsher, its pace faster. It adds another layer to the composition, helps build a sense of tension, as it makes the viewing experience more dynamic. However, this atmospheric focus comes with a price because when it's overdone, as it arguably became as the story progressed, the story itself grew increasingly less entertaining. We spend episode after episode watching the cast of characters taking part in random activities, often in beautiful settings. But these activities often, if not always, have no impact upon the story and its plot progression. There's nothing that progresses a story or brings it together, and we really need something to weave the plot together. Ultimately, once we got to a certain point, it felt as though the imagery was being used as padding to draw things out. It wasn't adding to the story or helping to tell it, and watching it flow by on screen failed to keep me engaged and push me farther and farther from understanding the story this anime was ultimately trying to tell. Overall, Glasslip is a mess. Had I not read a description on Crunchyroll, I couldn't really tell you what story it was trying to tell. And I think a lot of this stems from the fact that the creators were trying to do too much at once, leaning too heavily on atmosphere and visuals and gimmicks. The supernatural powers both Toko and Kakeru are said to possess are a prime example of one of these gimmicks. Every time Kakeru talks about his powers or Toko's powers feels meaningless, like he's simply filling space with his words, which don't add anything to the story and seem out of place in a slice of life anime, which usually lacks fantasy in its composition. Another example are Unagi's feelings for her stepbrother, a set of feelings which should complicate the relationship, add tension, something, but it does nothing. Doesn't make their interactions with one another uncomfortable, doesn't add tension, doesn't affect the relationship in any way. It's just a random taboo that was thrown into the show. The final example I will share is perhaps the most random, and it's when Kakeru begins speaking to different versions of himself. It's unclear why or if there's any real significance to this occurrence. It's simply another addition that seems like padding and doesn't add anything positive to the story. I won't spend much time talking about the characters simply because they don't seem like fully realized people, just human-shaped images on the screen with one or two defining traits, if that much. For example, as I mentioned previously, there's Toko Fukami, who can glimpse the future through glass. That's essentially all we get from her, and she's the main character. What on earth? Then there's Unagi, Toko's best friend and a wannabe model, who has a crush on her stepbrother, Yukinari, and tries to keep Toko from Kakeru, who she finds a little sus. And maybe she's a little jealous that her stepbrother is into her best friend, but that's essentially all the development we get from her, which is basically nothing. That's not a person. That's not a character. That's just, I'm not even sure what it is, but it's not a person. It's just a human-shaped thing going about some emotions to help tell a really, really incoherent story. In case it wasn't clear, I cannot recommend this one. Although it has some wonderful visuals and music, which helps lend strength to the atmosphere the creators are trying to depict, there isn't much in the way of plot. It's filled with gimmicks and padding and characters that don't seem like characters. And it's really, really sad. And there you have it, my review of Glasslip. What did you think of my review? Did I leave anything out? Do you agree with what I have to say? If you've seen it, let me know down below in the comments. I always like to know what you kings, queens, and in-betweens think. And if you like what you saw here today, please smash that like button until it's blue, subscribe, ring that bell so you'll always know what's up, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye guys!